just want to like
Yeah.
be in the spot where people make sense eventually.
What if the America millions of Europeans were warned about is not the America they actually find? World Cup 2026 is bringing visitors face to face with something headlines cannot reproduce. Bigger opportunities, easier daily life, unexpected warmth, and a country that can become dangerously easy to love. So why are some people extending their stays, rethinking home, and even considering a permanent move? The answer may say more about America than years of headlines ever did. America feels different. A strange thing happened when World Cup visitors began landing in the United States. The America they had heard about and the America standing in front of them did not always match. Years of headlines had trained many Europeans to expect a country defined by division, high costs, stress, danger, and endless arguments. Then they stepped outside the airport, spent a few days moving through American cities, and found something far more ordinary, far more comfortable, and frankly much harder to dismiss. That gap between reputation and real life is one of the biggest reasons America can become so magnetic once people actually spend time here. In much of Europe, the United States is often discussed through its loudest national problems. That makes sense from a news perspective because ordinary life rarely becomes international news. Nobody in Madrid wakes up to a breaking news alert saying that a family in Ohio had a perfectly pleasant barbecue, or that a visitor in Texas found strangers unexpectedly friendly at a grocery store. Yet those small encounters are exactly what shape the experience of living somewhere. During the 2026 World Cup, that contrast becomes especially visible because visitors are not watching America through a television screen anymore. They are driving through Dallas, walking around Miami, eating in Los Angeles, navigating Atlanta, spending time in New York, and meeting Americans face to face. Suddenly, the country becomes less like an argument and more like a place. That matters. Someone coming from London may be used to a dense city where housing is expensive, rooms are often compact, parking is limited, and daily life revolves around trains, buses, and walking. Arriving in a place like Dallas can feel like somebody grabbed the scale tool and dragged the entire city outward. Roads are wider, supermarkets are enormous, suburban homes have real yards, and even the parking spaces sometimes seem generous enough to host a small family reunion. The funny part is how quickly things that initially look excessive begin to feel comfortable. That giant refrigerator no longer looks ridiculous after several grocery trips. The oversized cup holder suddenly makes sense after a long interstate drive. A drive-through stops feeling like a cultural joke when the temperature outside is pushing 95 degrees and nobody wants to leave the air conditioning. America has a habit of explaining itself through use. Then there is the social side, which often catches people off guard even more. American friendliness can be unusually casual. A cashier may start chatting, a stranger may compliment a shirt, someone standing in line may suddenly recommend a restaurant as if they have been personally appointed by the local tourism board. In Northern European cities, where public interaction can be more reserved, that easy familiarity can initially feel almost suspicious. Give it a week, though, and suspicion can turn into affection. This is where the media image begins losing its grip. America is still complicated, and its problems do not disappear just because someone enjoyed a road trip or received good service at a restaurant. But lived experience adds something headlines cannot provide: proportion. A visitor begins seeing neighborhoods, families, workplaces, parks, stadiums, diners, highways, small towns, and everyday routines. The country becomes fuller and more human. By the time the World Cup trip stretches into several weeks, the surprise may no longer be that America feels different from the version seen overseas. The surprise is how easy it can become to stay a little longer. The paycheck surprise. There's one American souvenir that cannot fit inside a suitcase, and for some World Cup visitors, it may become far more memorable than a jersey or a stadium photo: the realization that the exact same career can carry a very different price tag on the other side of the Atlantic. That discovery has a way of changing the mood around America surprisingly fast. European workers are certainly not poorly educated, and many countries offer excellent public services, generous leave, and strong labor protections. The interesting part begins when comparable professional jobs are placed side by side. OECD wage data have repeatedly put average earnings in the United States among the highest in the developed world, while countries such as Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece sit considerably lower. Even Britain and France, two of Europe's largest economies, often trail American pay levels in many highly skilled private sector occupations. Technology makes the contrast especially easy to notice. A software engineer considering Austin, Seattle, or the San Francisco Bay Area can encounter compensation packages that would look unusually large beside similar positions in Madrid, Milan, or Lisbon. American healthcare, engineering, finance, sales, and specialized trades can produce the same reaction. The number on the screen suddenly has enough commas to make someone check whether the recruiter accidentally included the company's zip code. Of course, gross salary is never free money. American workers may face higher healthcare expenses, university costs, childcare bills, and fewer statutory vacation protections than Europeans. Housing in Manhattan or the Bay Area can devour an impressive paycheck before breakfast. A fair comparison has to admit all of that. Yet America has another advantage that becomes obvious once people stay long enough to understand the map. Workers are not limited to New York and California. A high-skilled employee can pursue American-level earnings while looking toward Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, or parts of the Midwest where housing and everyday expenses can be far lower than in the most famous coastal cities. That combination of income and geographic choice is where the idea becomes addictive. America effectively offers dozens of different economic environments inside one national labor market. Compare that with Lisbon, where local wages have struggled to keep pace with sharply rising housing costs, or London, where private rents consume a formidable share of many young workers' incomes. Eurostat has also documented substantial differences in hourly labor costs across the European Union, showing just how uneven earning power can be between member states. Then someone spends several weeks in America during the World Cup and realizes that moving for a better salary does not necessarily mean abandoning the language, currency, banking system, or national job market. Dallas feels nothing like Seattle, and Atlanta does not operate like Boston. Yet a career can move between them without crossing an international border. That changes the idea of opportunity from something abstract into something unusually practical. Perhaps this is why the American paycheck can be so seductive. It is not simply about earning more dollars. It is about looking at those dollars and realizing they may buy choices. Another city, a larger career move, a business idea, a home somewhere affordable, or enough breathing room to think beyond next month. After that realization, the return flight to Europe may suddenly feel a little more complicated. America runs cool. There's a very specific moment when an American summer begins to win people over. You walk out of 90-degree heat, open a door, and the building on the other side feels as if someone has been storing January indoors. For European visitors arriving during the 2026 World Cup, especially in hot host cities such as Dallas, Houston, Miami, Atlanta, and Kansas City, air conditioning may sound like a small detail until it becomes part of nearly every hour of the day. Hotels are cooled, restaurants are cooled, malls are cooled, cars are cooled, airports are cooled, and many homes are designed around climate control so thoroughly that Americans barely think about it anymore. That normality is far less universal across Europe. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration's 2020 Residential Energy Consumption Survey, about 88% of American households used air conditioning. In Europe, residential cooling remains much less widespread, particularly in northern and western countries where homes were historically designed for colder weather. The International Energy Agency has repeatedly noted that air conditioner ownership in Europe remains far below levels seen in the United States, even as hotter summers are pushing demand upward. That difference becomes painfully easy to understand in cities such as London, Berlin, Amsterdam, or Paris. Older apartments may have thick walls, radiators, and windows designed around keeping winter out rather than removing August from the living room. When a heat wave arrives, a small electric fan can suddenly become the most respected member of the household. America approached the problem from almost the opposite direction. In much of the Sun Belt, central air conditioning helped make large-scale population growth practical in places that would otherwise be brutally uncomfortable for months at a time. Phoenix, Houston, Las Vegas, and much of Florida grew alongside widespread mechanical cooling. The invention did more than lower room temperature. It helped reshape where Americans could comfortably live, work, shop, and build cities. That history is why stepping into an American supermarket in July can feel almost comically luxurious to someone who has spent European summers choosing a restaurant table based on which window might produce a breeze. Americans even developed a familiar summer ritual around it. You leave the house dressed for Texas, spend 20 minutes inside a grocery store, and suddenly wish you had brought a hoodie. Somewhere between the frozen food aisle and the checkout, July has been temporarily canceled. The appeal goes deeper than comfort because reliable indoor cooling changes how summer itself feels. Heat no longer controls the entire schedule. People can work normally through the afternoon, sleep comfortably at night, exercise indoors, shop without melting into the parking lot, and return home to a temperature they chose themselves. There are trade-offs, of course. Air conditioning consumes substantial electricity, and Europe's traditionally lower reliance on it has environmental and architectural reasons worth respecting. Yet climate change is making extreme heat increasingly difficult to treat as an occasional inconvenience, and European demand for cooling has been rising. That is where America can suddenly seem surprisingly forward-looking. Something Europeans may once have joked about as another example of American excess starts feeling remarkably sensible after a week of summer travel. By the 10th day, the visitor is no longer asking why Americans use so much air conditioning. They are quietly wondering how they ever lived without it. Strangers become teammates. Europe knows football culture better than almost anyone, which is exactly why the American version can be such a delightful surprise during the 2026 World Cup. A European supporter may arrive expecting the stadium to be the main event, only to discover that Americans somehow managed to turn the parking lot into Act 1. That difference sounds small until you experience what it does to the mood of an entire day. Across the United States, tailgating has become a social ritual built around sports, food, folding chairs, coolers, grills, team colors, and a remarkably loose definition of who counts as a friend. College football shows the scale better than almost anything else. Michigan Stadium holds more than 107,000 spectators, while Texas A&M's Kyle Field holds more than 102,000. On major game days, tens of thousands of people begin gathering hours before kickoff, which means the celebration is already fully awake, while the stadium gates are still thinking about opening. For someone accustomed to match days in London, Madrid, Munich, or Milan, the contrast is fascinating. European football culture often grows outward from pubs, train stations, city squares, supporter groups, and streets surrounding the stadium. American sports culture frequently has something Europe's dense urban stadium districts cannot always offer in the same way: acres of parking space that have somehow evolved into temporary neighborhoods. One pickup truck provides the grill, another supplies a television, somebody unfolds a table, and within 20 minutes the asphalt has developed its own kitchen, living room, and diplomatic service. The real charm, however, is not the barbecue. It is how easily the social boundary disappears. American sports gatherings have an unusually casual way of pulling strangers into the same orbit. Someone asks where you came from, another person offers food, somebody explains a local tradition, and before long a visitor can be holding a paper plate beside people whose names they learned 15 minutes earlier. That openness fits a broader American social habit. Conversation with strangers is often treated less like an interruption and more like an opportunity. The World Cup amplifies this beautifully because international fans bring their own chants, shirts, flags, food traditions, and rituals into a country already comfortable turning sporting events into all-day gatherings. The result can feel like somebody combined a football match, a neighborhood cookout, and the 4th of July, then gave everyone a reason to talk to the person standing next to them. There is something quietly addictive about that. Modern European cities can offer extraordinary public life, but social codes differ. In places such as Helsinki or Stockholm, strangers generally give one another more personal space. In Paris or London, people can spend an entire train journey politely pretending the other passengers do not exist. Nobody is being unfriendly. The etiquette simply works differently. America often removes that invisible barrier faster. After several weeks, the thing a visitor remembers may not be the size of the stadium or the score on the board. It may be how easy it felt to enter a crowd without remaining anonymous. That is a powerful cultural trick, because a country starts feeling less foreign the moment strangers begin treating you like you already belong there. And once America manages that, packing for the flight home becomes emotionally inconvenient. Service feels personal. One of the fastest ways America can ruin an ordinary restaurant experience back home is surprisingly simple. Let someone spend 2 weeks getting used to American service first. After that, an empty water glass starts feeling strangely personal, and waiting 15 minutes to catch a server's attention can suddenly seem like a minor administrative procedure. This is one of those cultural differences that rarely makes international headlines, yet it can shape an entire trip. American customer service developed around a highly competitive consumer culture where businesses have strong incentives to keep people happy, keep them returning, and keep them spending, according to the US Census Bureau. Annual retail and food service sales in the United States run into several $1 trillion. When that much consumer money is moving through the economy, companies pay very close attention to convenience, speed, loyalty programs, refunds, replacements, and the small gestures that make customers feel looked after. That mentality becomes obvious during a World Cup trip because visitors interact with it constantly. Restaurants often refill water without being asked. Many casual dining chains offer free refills on soft drinks. Hotel staff may solve small problems quickly because one poor review can travel farther than the customer ever will. Large retailers frequently maintain return policies designed to remove friction from buying, while supermarkets compete over everything from checkout speed to curbside pickup. The cultural contrast is especially noticeable for visitors from parts of continental Europe. In France, Italy, Spain, or Germany, restaurant service can be excellent, professional, and deeply rooted in local dining traditions, but the rhythm is different. European servers generally do not hover around the table every few minutes, and a long meal is often allowed to remain a long meal. In Paris, nobody necessarily interprets leaving diners alone as neglect. In America, meanwhile, a server disappearing for too long may trigger the same expression people make when their luggage fails to appear on the carousel. Neither approach is wrong, but the American version can become dangerously easy to enjoy. There's something comforting about feeling that the commercial environment is actively trying to save your time. A coffee order can be customized until it sounds like a software configuration. A supermarket can bring groceries directly to the car. A retailer may let customers return an unwanted purchase with surprisingly little ceremony. Many restaurants package leftovers without making the request feel unusual, because taking half a large meal home is practically part of the business model. Even the famous American phrase, "Can I get you anything else?" reveals something deeper than good manners. It reflects a culture where service is expected to remain responsive until the transaction is genuinely finished. That expectation can be especially refreshing during a massive event such as the World Cup, when travelers are already dealing with airports, unfamiliar roads, packed schedules, hotel check-ins, and stadium logistics. Every small inconvenience removed from the day feels disproportionately valuable. When everything else is unfamiliar, having someone calmly solve a minor problem can make an enormous country feel unexpectedly manageable. Europe has strong consumer protections of its own. European Union law, for example, generally gives consumers a 14-day withdrawal period for many online purchases, something Americans do not receive as a universal federal right. The difference lies less in legal superiority than in everyday commercial style. In America, convenience itself has become part of what businesses sell that can be surprisingly addictive. After enough weeks of being asked whether everything is okay, having drinks topped up, collecting dinner through curbside pickup, and watching a problem get solved before it becomes an argument, the habit settles in quietly. Then someone returns home, sits down at a cafe, waits patiently for the check, and discovers that America left one final souvenir behind. Their standards have moved. The backyard is epic. Europe can make a traveler fall in love with what humans built. America has a slightly unfair trick of its own. It can make you fall in love with what humans barely touched. That becomes especially powerful during a long World Cup summer, because once the stadium tickets are used and the city's schedule starts opening up, an American roadmap begins whispering some very dangerous ideas. Drive a little farther. Stay another weekend? There's a national park over there. Apparently there's also a canyon, a desert, a mountain range, 3 lakes, and a roadside diner serving pancakes the size of hubcaps. This is where America's physical scale stops being a statistic and starts becoming a lifestyle. The National Park Service manages more than 400 sites, including 63 designated national parks, and its system received more than 325 million recreational visits in 2023. Those numbers matter because America did something culturally unusual with enormous pieces of spectacular land. It protected them, built public access around them, and turned visiting them into something ordinary families actually do. Yellowstone alone covers almost 9,000 square kilometers. That puts one national park in roughly the same size category as Cyprus. Great Smoky Mountains National Park sits within driving distance of several southeastern population centers, while California can offer beaches, redwood forests, desert landscapes, and the Sierra Nevada within the same state. Arizona managed to make a hole in the ground so enormous that the phrase Grand Canyon has become shorthand for anything absurdly large. Europe certainly has magnificent wilderness. Norway's fjords, the Swiss Alps, Iceland's volcanic landscapes, and Slovenia's Triglav National Park can stop a conversation instantly. The difference is often how wilderness fits into everyday geography. A weekend from Paris might mean Normandy, the Loire Valley, or another historic city. From London, people can escape toward the Cotswolds or Lake District. Those trips are beautiful, compact, and layered with centuries of human history. American weekend travel can feel more like choosing a different planet. Leave Las Vegas and the neon eventually gives way to desert silence. Drive north from Seattle and mountains begin filling the windshield. Head beyond Denver and the Rockies do not politely appear in the background. They take over the entire meeting. That scale creates a particular kind of freedom. American road trip culture treats distance almost casually because highways connect landscapes that would be separate international vacations elsewhere. A few hours behind the wheel can completely change the climate, elevation, scenery, and even the accent at the gas station. For European visitors used to crossing a national border and the time it takes many Americans to drive to a college football game, that can be wonderfully disorienting. More importantly, nature in America often feels democratic rather than ceremonial. People arrive with coolers, kids, camping chairs, hiking boots, fishing rods, RVs, and sandwiches wrapped in foil. Nobody needs to behave as though they have entered an exclusive retreat. The outdoors is treated like a gigantic shared backyard, provided everyone respects the rules and does not attempt to negotiate with a bison. That last rule deserves special emphasis, and perhaps this is why the American landscape becomes so difficult to leave behind. A World Cup trip may begin with cities and stadiums, but somewhere between the first interstate road trip and the first sunset over a landscape that seems to keep going after the horizon has given up, the country becomes much bigger emotionally than expected. Europe gives travelers endless reasons to admire civilization. America can make someone want to disappear into the weekend and see what is beyond the next state line. That feeling is very hard to fit inside a return ticket. Roads feel free. A European visitor can spend years hearing that Americans are hopelessly dependent on cars, then arrive for the 2026 World Cup, rent one, drive across a few states, and discover an inconvenient possibility. Maybe Americans are onto something, because once the road becomes part of the experience, driving in America stops feeling like transportation and starts feeling suspiciously close to freedom. The first clue appears at the gas station. Fuel prices change constantly, but the tax structure explains why gasoline has traditionally been much cheaper in the United States than in much of Western Europe. The federal gasoline tax is 4 cents per gallon, a rate unchanged since 1993, with individual states adding their own taxes. The European Union, by comparison, sets a minimum excise duty on gasoline of $0, $3.59 per liter before value-added tax is added, and several countries tax fuel well above that minimum. Put those units into everyday language and the difference becomes difficult to miss. A driver in the Netherlands, France, Germany, or Italy is accustomed to watching the fuel meter with considerably more financial respect. Filling a large American SUV there can feel less like buying gasoline and more like making a small contribution to the national treasury. America built an entirely different relationship with distance. The interstate highway system stretches roughly 48,000 miles across the country, tying together metropolitan areas, smaller cities, suburbs, national parks, coastal regions, and huge stretches of countryside. Europeans have excellent motorway systems too, particularly in Germany, France, Spain, and Italy, but crossing borders can bring different toll systems, languages, road rules, fuel prices, and rental restrictions. In America, somebody can leave Atlanta, sleep in Nashville, continue towards St. Louis, and still use the same currency, phone plan, traffic signs, and familiar highway system. That continuity makes enormous distances feel strangely manageable. This is where the stereotype of Americans driving everywhere begins to reveal another side. Yes, many American communities were designed around automobiles, and that creates real disadvantages for people who cannot or prefer not to drive. European cities frequently beat American ones on public transportation and walkability without breaking a sweat. Anyone who has ridden the Paris metro or crossed central Amsterdam by tram understands that immediately. But America offers a different kind of convenience: personal range. A car can turn a Saturday morning into an unscheduled adventure without consulting a train timetable. Beach, mountain, outlet mall, barbecue joint, roadside attraction, another city, another state, the windshield becomes a menu. An American saying that something is only 2 hours away may sound slightly unwell to someone from Belgium, where 2 hours can put you remarkably close to another country. But after several weeks, that attitude begins making sense. The road trip is also one of the few American cultural cliches that becomes better when experienced rather than explained. There is coffee in a cup holder, air conditioning fighting the summer heat, an absurdly large gas station snack selection, music playing, and an interstate sign quietly promising somewhere new before sunset. Nothing complicated is happening, yet the feeling can be enormous. That may be why World Cup visitors who initially planned to see 1 or 2 host cities can suddenly find themselves adding detours. Dallas becomes Austin. Atlanta becomes Nashville. Los Angeles somehow becomes a discussion about Las Vegas. America has enough room to reward curiosity, and its road system gives ordinary people permission to use that room. After a while, the car keys stop feeling like keys. They start feeling like an open invitation. Maybe that is the real surprise America leaves behind. The country people were warned about can feel remarkably different once everyday life replaces the headlines. A World Cup trip may begin with soccer, but it can end with someone questioning what home is supposed to feel like. If you have ever watched a visitor fall in love with America in real time, tell us what changed their mind. And subscribe to the channel for more stories like this